Hello everybody, I hope you're doing all right. Now this session is all about setting up your blog site. There are a number of steps to go through, but it's fairly straightforward once we get going, and you can configure it as you like, as you'll see. Hopefully at the end of this session you will at least have the site running, and then after that you'll be able to start posting to the blog. Okay, let's get started then. Right, the first step is you need an account on GitHub. So you need to create this account. You can see I've actually come to the home page now. So you'll need a username, email and password. This doesn't have to be anything particular, but do make sure that you remember these details. You will need your username and password later on, as you'll see. I've already got an account, so I'm not going to create yet another one. I'm just presuming that you'll be able to go through that process and it will be fairly straightforward. You might get an email to confirm, and you'll need to go through these various steps to get that account. So I'm going to actually now sign in to my account. So I've got this special one that I use at Brooks, and I'm going to now put in my password, which hopefully you can't see. Okay, so this is my, I'm not going to save my my password. This is my, my space here. Now I've already got one repository actually, but you certainly won't have anything. So this is going to look a little bit similar to this, but you won't have anything, any repositories yet. Okay, so the next step is that you need to go to pick up the template that I've provided for you. Now I've actually got this written down here. This is where you need to go once you've signed into your, or you're in your signed in GitHub account. You just need to take a copy of this. Now this will be provided for you, but obviously I'm just going to leave it there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moments so you can actually just read that off. I'm just going to copy that and go back to my GitHub account, and I'm going to go to the URL and actually paste that in. So I'm going to that site, which is a template, as you can see. So this is a template. This is what we start with. Don't worry about all this code here. We'll get onto that later. The instructions are actually here written down, although I've still got some editing to do on that, but nevertheless, as I make this video, but actually, you know, when you get to it, you will be able to read these instructions as well if you want to. They will be posted, of course, elsewhere too. But basically what we're going to be doing here is using this template. So click on use this template. Now it needs a name. We need a name to take this repository. We're going to take a copy of this essentially into our own account, and you can give it the name whatever you want to give it, as long as it's one word, no spaces. A short name maybe just to help you remember what it is, although in your case you're only going to have one repository to begin with, so it's not a big deal. So I'm going to say my Brooks blog. That'll do. And it's telling me it's available. Of course it is. So there we have it. We can write in a description here. This is my site for posting blog items at Brooks, but you can describe it as ever you like. Now it will need to be public in order for this to work. Other than that, you don't need to say anything else. Leave it like that, and then click create repository from the template. So what this is doing is actually taking a copy of that template and creating it into your own account. So it's your unique version. Now what I suggest is that you keep this open. So keep this tab open here, because what you're going to need to do now is to go somewhere else to get the place where the actual site is going to be hosted, where the website is going to be hosted. So this is where your assets are stored, if you like, on GitHub for various reasons. Again, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. But we basically need somewhere to host the actual site itself, and that is going to be on a place called Netlify. So we go to a website called Netlify.com. We're going to go to that site. Okay, and this is where perfectly for free. This is all for free, by the way, without you getting alarmed that you're having to pay anything. Paying nothing here at all. And then what we do is we're not going to sign up here. We're going to log in. And the way that we're going to log in is we're going to use our GitHub account. So you can see we've got this button here at the top, this black button, GitHub. We're signing in with GitHub. So this is why, of course, you will need your account that you've previously used to make sure that you have that. Now, at the moment, for me, it's going straight to that because it already knows that I'm logged in to my GitHub account. This is why I wanted you to keep the GitHub account, and I've got it, as you can see, in the other tab of my Chrome browser. So it's asking me, am I really wanting to allow Netlify to use my account on GitHub? Yes, indeed I do, so I'm going to authorize it. Right, so there's a various bits and pieces about what's going on here. You can read this if you like. It's basically telling you you're going to get a free secure site and so on. Okay, so as you can see, it's telling me, it's giving me my name here. It's telling me I've got my account, and it should also, if you've done it on GitHub, you will see a little picture of yourself if you've changed the profile on GitHub, and you can go back and do that if you like at some stage. It will automatically bring that picture over from GitHub, that little tiny image of me. So what we actually want to do now is to make a new site from Git. Okay, so where are we getting it from? We're getting it from GitHub. Don't worry about these other places. There are other places you can host your assets, but I'm going to GitHub. Okay, now what it's doing is it's asking me, do I really want to use, now at the moment it's just, we've already done this, but it's basically just doing it through again. It's saying that I need to verify my account, which in my case is called Chris Brooks. So you're going to basically authorize it like this. Okay, it's authorized. Now you can see that it's basically saying, okay, I'm going to get access to all of your repositories. Is that okay? If you want, you can leave it like that because you're only going to have one repository. That's absolutely fine. So we're going to install. Right, so what it's basically asking for now is which repository do I want to use? Well, as I say, you're only going to have one repository. I've actually got two at the moment, but I'm just going to select this repository here. This is the repository that I want to use. Okay, it's going through and looking at the various information. Now the way it works is that this will come up by default because it recognizes the type of site that it is. It's using something called Jekyll, and the information is actually stored in something called the site _site, but you don't need to change any of that at the moment. Just simply hit deploy site. Okay, as you can see, it's actually deploying the site. So it's going through that process of taking all of the information from your GitHub repository and actually building the site for you. Now obviously the site at the moment will not make a lot of sense because it's not going to have any details about the site itself. You're going to need to make some change some settings in a moment, but we're coming on to that in a moment. So we're going to actually take a pause here while it builds, and then we'll come back to this. Okay, so that's now deployed, as they say, in this particular site, and we have a website. If I click here and open this in a new tab, you'll see that we now have a website. So this is built from the template, as you can see. And quite rightly, you know, you'll be thinking, well, heavens, I've got some things to change here, haven't I? Because I don't want it be called this. So you're going to change this information here. You're going to change the title of the blog. You're going to change this picture up here, the logo in the top left. And of course, you're going to then write your blog posts and remove this sample one. More on that later. We're not going to get onto that just yet, but at least you can see we do have a website. Now, what is the website itself? Well, this is where you're going to have to make a few decisions. Okay, so if we go to the site settings on Netlify, you'll see that actually the site itself is called awesomecorey blah blah blah.netlify.app. So in other words, it's come up with a random name, and you need to now change that and make some decisions for yourself about how you want to brand this site. So the first thing I would do is to have a look at changing the site name. So go into the site name, and this site name at the moment, as you can see, yeah, that's just a random name. So we want to change it to something that means something to us. As you can see, it has to be one word, no spaces, although you can use hyphens, of course. You can give it your name if you want, or you can give it the name of the site that you're planning to build. So you know, I hope that you've had a chance to think about this before we actually get to this stage. But if you hadn't, if you really want to just hold back, you know, stop this video if you like, and give this some real serious thought, your site is going to be called something, and I will now try my name, although it's quite possible that the name is already taken. But let's have a look. Yeah, so the site name is already taken because my name has probably been used before. I may have even tried this before. So I'm going to give it a different name. So I'm going to call it something random. Okay, so I've got a site now called Lucky Pudding, and I'm now that bit of information is quite important. Now, the thing that we need to look at now is the relationship between this site, which is where we're freely hosting the actual website, and then GitHub, which is where we're actually keeping all of the assets and the resources that go to build this site. So these two places are working in tandem, if you like. And so what you need to be able to do is to tell Netlify or tell GitHub that you are allowing Netlify to pull the data from there and send data back and forth between these two sites. So what we actually need to do now is to go down here to access control, and we need to use a provider that will actually allow us to authenticate our site. So every time we individually, we're not actually allowing anybody else to edit our site, obviously. We just need to be able to say to GitHub, oh, you know, we can log in through there and then we can actually edit the site. So we install a provider, which in this case is GitHub, and we need now these two items, the client ID and the secret code. So what we need to do is just leave that open, go back now to our GitHub account, go up to our profile up here and go to our settings for us. So you can see over on the right hand side, top right hand side, I've clicked that settings button, and I'm now going to developer settings, and I'm going to add an Oauth app. Now Oauth is really to do with the authentication. So it's a method of authentication, a method of, in other words, understanding logins and passwords and things like this. So I click on here and I'm going to now register a new application to allow to use GitHub to authenticate. So this is my my blog site. So I can just type that in there. And the homepage URL is what I just had up here. So this was actually, I'm using something called Lucky Pudding. So I'm going to go back here and put that in. .netlify.app, sorry, .app, not .com, .app. We don't really need a description in here, it's not really necessary. But then in here we need to put a very specific callback URL. So what we actually need to do is to put in this URL here that I've written down here. Now you're going to get this information obviously in a text or in some text somewhere in the help documents. But basically this is what we need. So as you can see, it's going back to using an API on Netlify to do the authorizing of the site. So I'm just going to copy that now and go back into my my site here and post that in. So that's pasting that into there. Done it twice accidentally. Okay, there we are. So register that application. oh yes, so that should be an absolute site. Just made a mistake there. We need to make sure that that is a full URL like that, https, and then the 2 slashes there, luckypudding.netlify. That should be all right now. Okay, so now I've got that done. So basically what we need now is this information here, the client ID and the client secret. So let's do some copying and pasting. First of all, that's the client ID. So now we're going back to Netlify and pasting that in there. Now we're taking the secret. So this is, as you can see, a very long, I wouldn't expect you to type this in. So do make use of copy paste with the keyboard or however you prefer to do it. And then paste the secret into there. Okay, so that's now done that aspect of it. So we're effectively ready. We can more or less leave Netlify alone now for the moment, and actually go back now to our site on GitHub. So this is the code that drives your site, but there are some things that you will want to change in here. Just a couple of very small details that will allow you to at least begin the process of actually editing the site online. So what we're going to go into a place called the admin folder. Just open that up like this, and what we're looking for is the config.yml document. Looks rather complicated. Just going to zoom in on a little bit, but really you don't want to change anything except just a few things at the very top here. So what we actually do is to go to this little icon, this pencil icon over here, and click edit this file, because what we need to do is to just simply go to these items up at the top. So first of all, this is your, what you put in here is the username that you have on GitHub. So in my case it's Chris@Brooks, and then the repository name, the name of your repository. So this is, as you can see, my Brooks blog. Okay, that's that done. Then down here where it's got site domain, this is the decision that you made about your site. So just to remind us here, what I called this was luckypudding.netlify. So we just need that. So you don't need to put in the full HTTP, etc. You can just leave it like that. You also see that you've got another place to put it down here. Same thing again. Do try to to type this in correctly. Otherwise, just take a copy of that and once again put it in there, so that it actually displays the logo. Now there are other things here that we will be coming back to change, but not right now. So leave that alone. Don't make any further changes in here. And you should then find, if I now zoom out again so that I can see my complete text. If we go down the bottom here, you can see that you can actually write a message optionally, but we've just simply updated the config and you can just commit those changes. So we are going to have to make one small change again in another config file, just to tell the system our URL that we've chosen for the site. So we now need to go up along here and locate another config file which is in the root. It's actually called _config.yml, and we go into here and we actually need to edit this file. So click on that little pencil icon, and then you'll see there's actually something similar to what we looked at before. We need to now change from your site you need to change it to the name of your site. So in my case, of course, this was called Lucky Pudding. And then I need to put in my username for my GitHub account, which was Chris@Brooks, followed by a slash and followed by the repository name, which of course in this case is my Brooks blog. And then once again we just commit those changes. You can just simply click the green button to commit those changes, and that will now work everywhere on the site for all the various links and so on that we will need to be making a little bit later on. So we've made a change here, and if we now go back to our blog site, and you can, if you go to deploys, this you can see now you've got a yellow message saying that it's building, because it's actually taking, now it's making a change. You've made a change, so consequently it's actually now rebuilding the site. So in a way we're more or less done. We're now good to go, but we now need to go into the site itself. So let's just do a pause here. I'll come back. And once this is finished building, we'll then go to the site itself and log in and start making some changes.